So this video today is going to be a little different. Usually I come on here to teach you practical tips and phrases for your German learning. But today I'm going to share with you my experience with learning languages in general and how I became fluent in English, Cantonese, Mandarin, and conversational in French. So I speak French on a solid B1 level. We'll dive into each journey and break it down so that hopefully you can take away some golden nuggets for your own language learning as well. One thing I can say for sure in advance is that each approach was a little different, yet they all have one thing in common, which is that I didn't become confident in speaking the languages through the traditional academic way of learning. Yes, that was a part of the process for some time, but if anything, it actually held me back from speaking confidently because of the fear of making mistakes and, to be very honest, sounding stupid. But we'll get into all of that. Of course, my experience also had a big impact on the way I'm teaching German today, which I'm also going to explain later in this video. So if you're up for today's story time, then please give this a like. And if you're new here and you have no clue who I am, well, hello and welcome to Speak Fluent German. My name is Salome, and on this channel, I usually teach practical and everyday life German to help expats and professionals become confident and conversational. So if this is something you are interested in, then make sure to hit subscribe and join the Speak Fluent German YouTube family. I would love to have you here. All right, so let's start with the most obvious one, English. How did I learn English as a foreign language up to the point of sounding like a native speaker, even though I've never been to the United States before? Although I'd love to visit someday. So I've actually started to learn English at a very young age. However, it didn't prevent me from feeling anxious about speaking in my young adult life. So given the fact that I have a multicultural family background, my parents were always very supportive of learning other languages. So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my mom's friend from the States who was living in Germany at the time came to our house regularly, and she used to play with me and my little sister. So it was a very playful way of learning some of the basics like the numbers and just being exposed to a native speaker, I guess. Then later I started learning English in school. In Germany, it is common to start learning English in 3rd grade, and you have it as a subject all the way up to high school. In the last 2 years of high school, or in German it's called Gymnasium, which allows you to go to university after you graduate, you have to pick 2 subjects as your sort of like main subjects. And at that time I took English and politics. So I had a couple of years of learning English in a very academic way. It was surely helpful to build a foundation, to get a grasp of the grammar and to learn the structure of the language. But it also gave me a lot of anxiety about actually speaking the language. So I was very good at like reading things out loud, my pronunciation was good, I understood everything easily, but when it came to speaking, I just froze. So doing something like this today, speaking in English to someone or to a camera for a long period of time was just unimaginable for me. And for those who are not familiar with the German grading system, in Germany you actually get 2 grades for one subject. You get a grade for your exams and another one for participating in class. Both of these then form the final grade. My teacher at the time told me that if I didn't improve my speaking, she wasn't going to give me the better grade, even though my exams and all that were fine. That ended up giving me even more pressure and anxiety, and it didn't really feel encouraging or helpful at all. So why am I telling you this? Because I know a lot of you feel the same way about speaking in German. If this resonates with you at all, let me know in the comments below. So I carried this fear of speaking English around me for quite a while, even after high school, and I was only able to make a turnaround when I moved to Hong Kong after graduating from uni to work there for a German company at the time. That really forced me to get out of my comfort zone in so many ways. I mean, moving to another country comes with its own set of challenges, and it was a very difficult process. Even though I knew Hong Kong from previous travels, it's a whole other game actually living there and trying to adapt to a new working culture, which was very different from Germany. I experienced quite a few misunderstandings in the beginning and felt incredibly lonely, to say the least. But I'll leave the whole adapting process for another video if you're interested. After arriving in this new environment where everyone either spoke English or Cantonese, I really had to figure out how to feel more comfortable with speaking English. There were a couple of things I started doing that turned out to be quite useful. The first thing was I switched all my media consumption to English. I only watched English YouTube videos, followed English accounts around topics that I was interested in, like fitness, mindset, and personal development. I literally switched everything that I was consuming to English, even the settings on my phone and computer. The next thing I used to do a lot, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but I started speaking to myself in English throughout the day. Hey, I mean, I was alone in a new country. I didn't have any friends yet. My local colleagues at work weren't really communicative, so who else would I speak to? And I also found myself repeating words from videos or podcasts. The third thing I did was allowing myself to make mistakes and to ask for help. For someone who worried a lot about being taken seriously and who is in general a perfectionist, this was definitely a huge step, and it was absolutely necessary to start making friends and not just passively living my life in this new exciting city. Most of us move to another country to experience and learn about a new culture, to fully dive in and to feel integrated. So the purpose of this whole experience is not to stay in a tourist bubble, but to be part of the local community, and this is where language plays a crucial role. So if you're currently finding yourself in a tourist bubble, I encourage you to get out there, connect with people, even if it might feel a little scary at first. It definitely gets better over time, but you need to make this first step. I've actually made a whole video about how to connect with locals and make new friends in Germany that you can check out next if you want to. Living in Hong Kong as an expat also allowed me to make massive improvements to my Cantonese skills. So here's the funny thing about the Cantonese. I've never learned it in the academic way, and I'm very glad I didn't, because it's incredibly difficult, especially the pronunciation. So Cantonese has 9 tones, and just trying to figure out which one is which already feels very overwhelming to me. So how did I learn it? 咁我應該開始講我阿媽其實同我阿妹細個嗰陣時講好多廣東話啦，但係搬完去香港之後呢，我就發現到其實我啲廣東話嘅 level 同一個小朋友差唔多。所以如果喺香港做嘢嘅話，或者同啲同事溝通呢，我就嗰陣時覺得我個廣東話唔夠。So it was definitely not enough to communicate with my colleagues at work, where they used a lot of technical terms. So for the first 2 to 3 months, I would just listen at work. I cannot emphasize on how much listening can help you improve your language skills. Nowadays, everyone walks around with their headphones on noise cancelling mode, completely separating themselves from their surroundings. Don't be one of them if you really want to learn how people speak in their day-to-day life on the streets. So eventually I caught up on those technical vocabulary for work, and I also insisted on speaking in Cantonese to my local colleagues when it was like a one-on-one conversation. Like if I just had a question about something, I would always ask in Cantonese, and eventually my Cantonese got so good that my colleagues didn't even bother about doing the meetings in English anymore. And this honestly took a lot of discipline, because it would have been so much easier to just ask my team to speak in English to me, especially because I wasn't the only expat in the company. But instead, I took every opportunity to use Cantonese. At least I would try, and if I hit a dead end, I could still switch to English. Was it a mess in the beginning? For sure. Did it get better over time? Absolutely. There is no way you won't get better in German if you keep putting in the effort. It's like working your muscles. There is no way they don't grow if you keep training them heavily. So compared to Cantonese, Mandarin only has 4 tones, and you might think it must have been so much easier for me to learn. Well, not really. I learned Mandarin in a very academic and traditional way, like I'm talking drills on drills on drills, memorizing tons of vocabulary, like literally writing one character for pages over and over again until it stuck. It was an absolute nightmare, and this is one of the big reasons why I don't teach German the traditional academic way. So at the age of 15, I was like, either I do an exchange year in China and put myself in a position where I don't have a choice but to learn it properly, or I'm just going to give it up. because the way I was learning it in the classroom honestly felt like a huge waste of time. Now, mind you, this was long before social media or apps were a thing. There weren't even any smartphones at the time, so I couldn't just make a Chinese online friend, and I was too shy to speak to any of my classmates in Mandarin school because their language skills were just so much better than mine, or at least that's what I told myself. 然后2008年我终于去了重庆留学。当时在重庆没有很多外国人，所以我的同学比较害羞讲英文，但是对我来说是一个很好的机会跟他们讲普通话。还有我的接受家庭当时完全不讲英文，所以我就必须跟他们讲普通话。So this year abroad at the age of 15 helped me so much to improve. Also, I really loved watching Taiwanese TV shows. Whatever show was popular around that time, like 流星花园, 恶魔在身边, 东方 Juliet, Smiling Pastor, like you name it, I pretty much watched them all. Now, my Mandarin is not perfect, and to this day, I do language exchanges to keep up with my speaking skills. But I think the biggest lesson here is that sometimes if you feel stuck and you're not moving forward, it might be the time to change your environment or at least change the way you're doing something. Because you can't expect different results from doing the same old thing over and over again. The first time I was exposed to French was at the age of 10, I think, when my family was hosting language students from France for the very first time. So they did a language program and came to Germany to learn German, and during that time they stayed with host families. Honestly, that time was a lot of fun because, again, I started learning the basics in a playful way, like counting, for example, because we would play hide and seek and things of that sort. Later on, I proceeded to take French in school for around 8 years, where I learned it in the academic way. And during that time, I also did a few student exchanges and basically took every opportunity to speak with the students my family were hosting. Interestingly, with French, I never felt that anxiety of speaking or making mistakes. I just had an immediate acceptance of how messy the process was, and as long as the other person understood what I was trying to say, that was enough proof for me that I was doing good enough to keep going. It's so important to celebrate these wins along the journey, whether those are small wins or big wins. I have a thing with my students called Wins Wednesday. So on Wednesdays, we share the milestones we've achieved and celebrate each other. This is really important because you kick off a positive feedback loop, and that helps you to gain momentum and to keep going. So all of these experiences and lessons learned shape the way I teach my mother tongue German today. It's also why I have a huge passion for people who want to move to the German-speaking countries, because I know exactly how it feels like living as an expat in a foreign country, trying to figure things out and learning a language on top of everything else. If you have made it to the end of this video, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I hope you were able to take away some golden nuggets for your German learning. If you want to join me and my students inside the German Fluency Academy, there's a link below this video where you can sign up for a call to speak to either me or one of my team members. We will then evaluate together if the German Fluency Academy is the right fit for you and your goals. I hope to speak to you soon. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!